Continue with our discussion regarding creativity in advertising, something that you would wish to at least understand more about advertising as in general, I should say, advertising, creativity, being a creative, and why you need to understand more. And as an employer, I think, as a business person, it is high time you go to realize the importance of advertising and which strategies can you lay to at least attract a number of people to at least add value to your business, to at least also add customers to your business as well. Now, we're getting into more of the discussions here. Now, when we look at which factors facilitate creativity in a business or advertising in regards to marketing and all those things, what are those factors that influence this?
Well, generally, creativity in any space is a lot of times would require maybe the same factors, but for advertising from our field, the first thing is you'd need open communication, right? It's nice for you to communicate, to share ideas, right? So if you are going to come up with a concept or an idea, right, everyone who is involved in the production process should be able to communicate their ideas, right? It's important that there is a decision maker, because a lot of the times you won't see eye to eye, but everyone should be able to communicate their ideas. It is also important to receive feedback, right, and then act on the feedback or give your point of view to defend your course of action, right? So what would happen with a lot of times what causes communication to fail sometimes is in advertising, a lot of times we work with creatives, artists, right? And artists, we generally can be a very, well, some of us anyway, can be a very emotional group. So you want to convey your feedback in a manner that shows that you understand where the artist is coming from, right? Because a lot of times when the creatives put in their work, they put in their time, what you find is if you give your feedback, and we have, I don't know if you know what a compliment sandwich is. So it's where you give feedback in a way that doesn't touch nerves or hurt feelings, right? Even when you would like this to be completely changed, like whatever it is they presented to you. So you need to be wise enough to both receive this information and give your feedback, your honest feedback, in a way that does not offend the rest of your creatives or does not belittle them. Because what you do is create a situation where people are quiet and sitting on brilliant ideas, right? That is something you totally want to avoid. You also want to avoid a situation where a situation where a creative is moved by your critique,
okay,
right? Like if it's not always a bad thing that they're not happy with your critique, like they're emotional about what you've given them. It's not always a bad thing. It means they are invested in your work. The minute you have a creative who is milling or does not care, like you tell them, oh, change this, change this, change this, change this, there's no rebuttal, no questions, nothing. That creative has de-invested. Does not, whatever's going out is going out. They've de-invested, right? So that's something you also want to avoid. You want them to remain invested in your work. So you want them to defend their work and go out there and say, no, I prefer it like this, I like it like this, because then you know they care about the content they're giving you, right? So clear and open communication is something that would be very important. The next thing for creativity is a clear understanding of the problem. Like, it's important that everyone in the room understands what the problem is and what the solution could be, right? Because if you don't understand, we have been on projects, there are plenty of projects or even business endeavors you'll get into, and you don't fully understand what the commodity is, or you don't fully understand the industry, or you don't fully understand the client. Okay. One of those, you don't fully understand their market, if any of those is missing, then it's tricky for you to become creative, to innovate, if you don't fully understand what their problem is.
Okay.
Right? So an understanding of their problem would be something that's very important. So a clear understanding of the available resources also helps with creativity. Right? You want to know how much resource you have, both in terms of funding, time, manpower, all that. right? If you're uncertain of what resources will be availed to you, it becomes difficult for you to be creative, right? You don't know how big the budget is, you don't know how long you will be required to present it, or how many people you'll be allowed to work with. If you don't have all this information, you don't understand what your resource constraints are. It's hard for you to be creative as well.
Okay.
So, in advertising, it's also important to have a clear understanding of the audience, right? So, like I said, it's part of understanding the problem, right? If you clearly understand whatever audience you are appealing to, it's why a lot of agencies, a lot of companies, organizations will subcontract or contract local advertisers or content creators because they better understand that market.
Okay.
Right? It can be tricky for you to have, even with the data presented and all that, right? They bring it and they give you all this information at your desk. To understand a market that is totally alien to you can be difficult, right?
Okay.
So, understanding the audience is a very key aspect of what we do, right?
All right.
So, the last one would be a clear understanding of the available solutions, right? Or at least what your client is looking for in terms of solutions.
Okay.
You find a lot of times it's not that the client doesn't know what they need or doesn't know what they want, because they've been in the field for a while. They might have a track record of what works. So
and what doesn't.
Yeah, so if you have an understanding of this as well, creativity becomes so much easier.
All right. But speaking of the world of creatives, what are some of those challenges that the creatives face, the creative minds face during the execution of their duties?
Yeah, a lot of the times it depends on it varies from creative to creative, right? Say, for example, in my space, I do work with a lot of creatives. If you're interacting with, say, for example, animators, right? A lot of the challenges the animators face is being overbooked. Animation work will require a large amount of, it requires a significant amount of resource to execute, right? So if you are going to be doing 2D animation or 3D animation, the animators need enough time to go out, illustrate the characters, right? Come up with the designs. They need to be able to model, texture, rig, light, do all that and animate within the available time, right? So what happens, a challenge you'll find with a lot of animators is they're overbooked, right? And because we are in our economy being what it is, when you present some animators with funding, right, you tell them, okay, this is the money that's available, they'll say yes. The next client will come and then they'll say yes. Next client will come and they will say yes. And then now they are overbooked. Something you find with a lot of animators, it's a challenge I find with animators, like a lot of times they'll end up overbooked, which is not the same challenge with, say, graphics designers. The challenge with graphics designers is sometimes you can find, for some of them, you can find their delivery. There can be some issues with delivery. Like I said, if you are going to be working on a team and sometimes you want to present your client with something new, you decide to outsource. So you work with the person once in a while, right? So sometimes dependability can be an issue. So you find some of them you can find have a situation where they are no longer invested in what they're doing. Because not all creative work, especially with graphics designers, not all of the work they do is going to be their magnum opus. It's not the work of their lives, not all of it, right? So you find they have, like what I said, what they've done is de-invested. Okay. So a client will present them with ideas, and whether it's a terrible idea or a good idea, they don't mind about putting input. They don't want to back and forth with the client. They're not going to do that. They'll just churn it out. They'll just release the work because they are hoping to get paid. So part of the creativity, what happens, a challenge they would face in their situation, while the animators get overbooked, sometimes you find the graphics designers are burnt out, like they are de-invested. Okay. Right? They will sit in Illustrator, Photoshop, and work on it in a few seconds and be done with it. Move it out of the way. Okay. For some creatives, I've also found have a situation where they are learning on the job. Okay. Like it is a good way to learn, but it's not the most ideal space if you have huge deadlines and panic. It is something I found mainly with people who, say, for example, I do understand that a lot of software development or interacting with technology, especially for advertising, a lot of it requires some research and studying, right? But it creates a situation where you're in a meeting. A challenge they are going to face is you are in a space or in a meeting presenting to the client, and the client is yes, and you're asking, say, your software developer or someone who's working with that space, how long would it take to generate this sort of thing? And then they would be like, oh yeah, I can definitely figure it out. But you see, that's the problem. They will be finding it out as they go, right? They're finding the solutions as they go, which can be a problem if you have a deadline, or if they're not the ones making the presentation, in which case, if I went on behalf of the developers to pitch, and they say 3 months, and I'm like, yes, it's fine, 3 months, it's doable, but you are not sure whether because they have to figure out some of these items as they go, right? Which can be a challenge. Sometimes it's very easy, and they figure it out right away. Something you thought was going to take 3 months, 1 day, 2 days, it's done. Something you thought was going to take 3 days because you've done something similar ends up taking a month, 2 months.
Okay. All right. Now, speaking of, in your last few words, I would want to understand, what is the best way for a creative to stay on top of their game?
I think the best way for a creative to stay on top of their game is to, well, consume the content they produce, right? In the same field. If you are a videographer, consume as much video content as you can. Like, go ahead, see what other people are doing, right? Watch movies, watch ads, be in sync with your industry. It will be a good gauge for you to see how well you're doing, all right? If you're an animator, watch animation. Watch a lot of it. Consume it, whether it's an advert, whether it's 2D, 3D, just consume it so that you can see where you stand in your industry. It will allow you to innovate. If you're doing radio ads or music, again, consume it. Listen to radio, listen to music, understand what the rest of the industry is doing. It would be a great way for you to both source talent when you need it, if ever you need it, also to learn and innovate, come up with new ideas. Because sometimes it might not be necessary to reinvent the wheel. People have found solutions to what you're looking for. So if you continuously consume the content you produce, gradually you will get better and stay on top of your game. You will not find yourself 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. Someone presents you work, and you cannot believe that this is someone also in your field.
Okay. All right. Then lastly, Mark, your final remarks as we're winding up with our discussion this morning.
I'm grateful that you were able to host me today morning.
Pleasure's ours.
Yeah, I'm hoping this will happen again.
Sure.
Right. I guess for the industry as is, advertising industry in Uganda is definitely gradually growing. Like, it's within time, it's going to keep up to pace with the international standard. It will definitely catch up, right? Because we've groomed and raised a whole bunch of artists, even on a global stage, that are doing amazing work.
All right, and that is Mark Biarugaba from the Uplift Creatives here, giving us more details in regards to creativity in advertising. And I should say it has been a very huge conversation and discussion regarding matters to do with creativity. Well, for a business person, I believe these are things that you definitely need to take key note of in regards to marketing and advertising. How best can you brand yourself? How best can you sell out your brand to the people and to everybody who is out there to at least buy your service or buy the product that you're dealing with? And this has been Smart Men's Business today, Tuesday, 26th of July, 2022. Have a blessed day. Coming up is Financial Markets with Anthony Sebale. Later on, we shall be having Yugi Tukole with Fred Makuya and Scale Up with Naomi Mutumba. And later on, Jenkolila with Hassan Waswa Nduga. I'll be back in the night with Business Today to give you the latest of the reports from the world of business in regards to the news bulletin. And of course, you can stick around with us this morning. We're on GoTV channel 394 and get more discussions on our social media. Smart24 TV, that is on Instagram, and Smart24 TV official on Facebook. You've been an amazing audience this morning. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko. Till tomorrow, good morning.